Hello, ladies and gentlemen, whoever dared to go into my, I don't know, whoever is watching. We are going to read some spooky stories because you know what? It's almost that time of year when people are going to be scared out of their minds by going to haunted houses and stuff. And also, it fits the, I don't know how to say, it fits the spirit of, Halloween. So, going to do is I'm going to read to you spooky stories that I found. So just sit tight, relax, And also to make it more, dramatic, I've turned off all the lights. Though there is some light over there. Don't mind that, okay? Gotta go to the dark side if you want things to get interesting. Okay. So, oh, she probably can. Oh, you saw my face. No, my face. Yes, okay. Well, yeah, okay. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do something. Well, if you guys can see my face, that's not really great, is it? No, it's not. Well, you know what? When I'm reading, you guys just won't see me at all. I'll just do this. Okay, so the first story we're going to read about is the figure in the dark robes. Ooh, sounds scary already. Okay, let's begin, shall we? I've told this to a select few, and maybe, well, creepiest/scariest is subjective. In the context of my life, it is true that the truly is the creepiest and scariest unsolved mystery. I was a freshman in high school in my hometown of La Crosse, Wisconsin. I was sleeping over at my friend Tom's house. We were watching a movie in his living room when he suddenly got a phone call. I watched as he listened to what was being said on the other line. I watched as emotion poured over his face as he threw the phone across the room. After moments of crying, he told me that a boy at my school had committed suicide. Now I knew this boy only through seeing him in the halls. My friend Tom and I didn't go to the same high school, but Tom had gone to middle school with this boy. Apparently, Tom bullied him during those years. He wasn't proud of it, and to be honest, I was pretty surprised because he was a great guy. He had utter remorse. We decided to sneak out and go for a walk. The year was roughly 1990, maybe 1991. We were freshmen in high school. Now, sneaking out was nothing new. We always did it. At the time, we weren't into drugs, alcohol, or partying. We just liked the freedom of walking the streets at night. The discussions greet were always great. Sorry, my language. Normally, we'd go walk through the big cemetery that was near my house. It was behind the train tracks that still ran through La Crosse to this day. We loved the danger of the cemetery, the scares. We were kids. It was a rite of passage as we walked along the train tracks leading to the cemetery. We stopped. To this day, I can't explain why we had walked into that cemetery dozens of times, and on scarier nights. For whatever reason, we didn't want to go in there. I don't know if the thought of death on our minds due to my classmate's suicide was a factor. Perhaps. Regardless, without really saying anything to each other, we stopped, turned around, and decided to head down a nearby street. Now, the retrospect, I do have to say that throughout this walk, things seemed off. There wasn't a car in sight. This was suburbia. Even walking through the town's main street was odd because there weren't any cars. Odd. It was roughly after midnight. It was weekend. It was a weekend night. Where was everybody? Perhaps just a strange coincidence. Lastly, there was something in the air. Both Tom and I felt it. We even brought it up. It feels weird tonight. The air, the lights. So we decided to walk down the dead end street. At the end of the street was a ditch with a simple up and down and up trail that led to the street that I lived on. Simple enough. Keep in mind, as I get to the horrifying part of the story, that we were in the suburbs. These weren't old creepy houses with strange individuals, and the trees were small. It wasn't a brand new development, but it wasn't that old either. So, as Tom and I were walking down the street, looking down to the road beneath our feet as we walked and talked, I don't remember the exact conversation at this particular moment. Perhaps we were talking about the tragedy of that night, but it could just have easily been our Star Wars or Akira. As we approached the dead end, which was a few hours away, Tom and I suddenly stopped. We did so at the same time without saying one word to each other. Our heads slowly turned toward each other, both sensing something, the hair on our arms and the backs of our necks standing high. Then our gaze slowly moved forward in unison, slightly to the right. Then we saw it. With two houses away, in a virtually barren front yard of a suburban home, beside some bushes, was a dark figure. It was someone or something in dark robes. No face, no features at all, just the robes. Now this figure didn't acknowledge us, not yet. It instead walked or moved in a certain way. I can't articulate it correctly, as if it was walking in circles slowly without really walking. It held something that was blowing in the wind. And yes, the wind picked up a little bit as well. Another odd element was the light that illuminated it somewhat. There was a street light a few houses up, but it wasn't strong enough to illuminate this figure as it was. Tom and I were frozen. In fact, I'm almost frozen as I write this. It's been a while since I have thought about this night. So there we stood, frozen in fear, staring at this dark figure moving, yet doing so without moving. And it was holding something, or perhaps what was blowing in the wind was more of its robe. I'm not sure. We stared at this thing for I don't know how long until it stopped and suddenly looked up at us, as if finally alarmed by our presence. That was enough for us. We ran away as fast as we could. We cut through the side street that was to lead us parallel street toward my neighbor's house. The street led to a silent hill that as we rounded the corner and started running up the hill in a panic. We stopped because on top of that hill we saw another dark figure with its arms raised. We turned around and ran away in the direction of Tom's house, which was at this distance 5 miles away. We ran. Time stood still. The next thing I remember, we were laying in the middle of a courtyard of some other neighborhood that we've never been in, gasping for breath. We sat up, and without saying a word, we walked away in silence back to his house. The air felt normal again, although we felt like we were in a haze of sorts, all, all of it out of danger. We fell asleep in his house. I woke up that morning and went home. A few days later, I rode my bike to the location. Perhaps it was shadow play, perhaps there was a certain tree or bush, or maybe a for sale sign or something that made it look that there was something else there. Nothing. It was an open yard. Tom and I didn't speak of that night for a long time. Years later, when I brought it up, he replied, "Yeah, what the hell was that?" As if no time had passed. What was it? I have no idea. We haven't taken any drugs. We hadn't been drinking any alcohol. I wonder if we been could have been a haunting, a specter, a ghost, etc. Maybe it was an alien abduction or sighting. We saw no craft, but there was that unexplained light, or maybe it was some of the other kids messing with us. But how would they have known we were coming? How could they be so prepared? I just don't know. That was roughly 24 years ago, give or take. And yes, this is a true story. Sadly, my best friend Tom passed suddenly a few months ago. I thought of the night during his funeral. I thought of returning to that site. I thought of the odd coincidence of unexpected and surprising death, just like my classmate that night. Is there a connection? Were we seeing some future fate for one of us? Which sadly fell upon my best friend Tom. Was this all some dull dual hallucination in my mind? No way. It haunts me at times. Ooh, that was interesting. That was like one of the stories. It wasn't really scary, was it? It's like, hello, go home, you're drunk. Welcome. We were just reading some scary stories. Not really scary per se, in my opinion. I need something more intense. Any suggestions? Hold on, I need to put something on so when I'm reading, you guys can actually see me while at the same time not seeing my face. Because my identity is crucial. I'm like Batman. I need to keep my face hidden. Because I'm a millionaire secretly. No, I'm just kidding. I wish I was. Alright. Since we got that covered, let's go on to the second story that we have. So I am sitting literally in the dark. So there's no lights or anything. You can't really see my face, which, I prefer. So we're going to go on to the next story, which is called The Little Boy with No Eyes. I like this one already. Alright, let's begin. One night when I was 10, I was asleep in my bed when I was woken up by my bedroom door opening, then something sitting on my bed. I felt the graze on my leg and the bed sink as they sat. And it was my mom having something to tell me. I opened my eyes only to see a pale, eyeless boy who seemed to be my age sitting at the foot of my bed, with his legs crossed staring at me or facing my direction since he had no eyes. He then reached his hand toward me and he was holding what looked like to be a little black box. I was freaked out, but as I reached to grab it, he hesitantly pulled back. I reached out further for it and said, "Give it." As I did so, I blinked, and by the time I reopened my eyes, he was gone. The spot off the bed where I was sitting lifted back into place, well, where he was sitting, into place, but the imprint of somebody sitting there was still present. I told my mom in the morning, and she was slightly freaked, but assured me I was just dreaming. Fast forward 5 years, I had my girlfriend over to do homework. After homework, she took a nap while she waited for her parents to pick her up. When they arrived, I tried waking her to let her know. I nudged her. She opened her eyes. Already looking, oh, so sudden, already looked in the direction of the corner of the room where the wall meets the ceiling, lifting her finger and pointed us. And as fast as she woke, she fell asleep again. I attempted to wake her again. She came to full consciousness, and I asked her what the hell that was about and explained what she just did. And she said, "Oh, I thought I was dreaming, but up on the wall I saw a little boy with no eyes, just there in a Spider Man pose, staring at me." That's when I freaked out and told her the story for the first time of when I saw what I guessed was the same kid. Fast forward another 5 years, still with the same girlfriend, and by this time we had a 2-year-old daughter. We were living in my old bedroom at my parents' house. My daughter would wake me up at the same time every night and start talking. For a while we thought it was a normal baby thing until I noticed it was almost the same conversation every night. I playfully asked her one night who she was talking to every night. She responded, "A little boy. He keeps talking to me. He's nice. He's lost and looking for his." I told my mom what happened the next morning, and before I got to tell her what I thought, she said, "I remember when that happened to you, then your girlfriend. I had no idea what that is." By then, neither my girlfriend nor I have seen the little boy after our first encounter. But my daughter continued her nightly conversations until we got our own place later that year. So, seeing creepy kids, okay? I don't know about that, but that's not really scary. Maybe we can find something better. So, let's see. Gonna find a better ghost story, because, oh man, my glasses have smudges on them. Come on, we need horror, people. Horror. Scary things. Creepypastas. I guess. Okay. Ooh. Okay. Okay. Let's read the poltergeist. Okay. Okay, let's read this one. This one looks good. When I was 16 in the mid 1990s, I used to run away from my crappy living situation at home and spend weeks long excursions at my old teenage friends' places. One of these why Xandus was hovel was my friend Jay's apartment, located at the very top of the mostly empty 5-story complex. In an absolutely terrifying high crime part of the city, the entire building, except the very bottom floor, was vacant except for Jay. It was a particularly isolating sense of freedom being there, as well as extra creepy. Upon Jay's moving in to said dump, we noticed something remarkable right away. This place was undeniably a very obviously haunted. Was very obviously haunted. Was made known the very moment I cleared the threshold on moving day, carrying a heavy box of Jay's books. A large, warm hand ran straight up my back to my bare right thigh. I was wearing a skirt, even though it was autumn because teenager. And the sensation of my hand running up the back of my upper thigh turned to a pinch of my butt cheek. I froze, of course, and could only think of fretfully call out to Jay, who was in the bedroom inflating the $10 air mattress. Jay, did you pinch my butt? He stuck his head out of the room and looked at me like I was insane and responded, no. Okay, that was weird. I told him what had just happened, and instead of scared, he seemed amused. Okay, this is not scary so far. Uh, they already know it's haunted. That's not fair, but that was stupid. Okay. Um, Here, let's read folklore. Folklore is scary. Some of it. Let's see. Scary folklore. Um, okay, so we're gonna find some terrifying folklore tales around the world that you've never heard before. Okay. The not so friendly face of Sugras. Sugras. I don't know how to say it, but I will put I will type that word in there for you so you guys can see it. So something like that. Oh, there's an S in there. Whatever. It's best I could in the dark. Okay. So according to tales from Sweden, this mystical creature is said to appear as a beautiful, kind woman near the edge of the forest. She then lures her victims deep into the trees, where they are overwhelmed by the feeling of being lost, and they are never heard from again. Sounds like my kind of creature. Black anise, terrifying appetite. Oh, these are just listing off things. Come on. Hmm. You know what? We're gonna read some creepypastas because you know what? Even though some of them aren't even scary, so we're gonna be like creepypasta. Probably get some good ones. Because you know what? It seems like I can't find anything good outside of the fact that these are kind of silly, so Creepypastas. Alright, so we're looking for a story. People voted this one. Secret Doctors of NASA, a dentist discovery. Huh. We'll read that one. Okay. So this begins like this. The Secret Doctors of NASA is a series of memoirs, diaries, and reports from actual doctors employed by the undisclosed arm of NASA between 1970 and 2001. These writings contain true accounts of the unusual and often highly classified medical conditions experienced by astronauts during and after their space missions. Following the defunding and the Clandestine medical program after the September 11, 2001 terror attacks, the majority of these accounts were left forgotten on tape drives in a NASA storage facility. In 2016, a former intern whose job was to clean out one of these facilities discovered them. 2 years later, he is ready to release what he found. Dentist discovery. Arnold F. A blank 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 DDS, August 4th, 1989. I met the astronaut after a half-year mission on the Russian space station. He'd gone through his preliminary post-landing physical, but complained about pain in his jaw and gums. His health, aside from those complaints, was fair. It was my job to find out what was wrong with him before moving him on to the next specialist, the urologist, I think. The order always changes. The patient was in decent spirits when we met. Although I could tell something was on his mind, we chatted a little bit. It turned out he'd been working on the Fang Li discovery. My heart sank. When Fang and Li discovered what they initially called the Venus Tic Tacs in 1982, no one in the know was surprised. Just another alien organism to add to the list of hundreds. A team was formed to conduct research and determine its risks and benefits, and there were no exceptions that anything would come of it. Well, as it is so often the case, those in the know knew nothing. Give those Venus Tic Tacs an electric shock in the right place for the right amount of time, and what do you get? Pluripotent stem cells. They had the potential to be a game changer in the field of regenerative science, well, medicine. I don't think anyone expected to discover them when they did. All the data we had showed we at least a decade away from introducing pluripotency. Hell, we assumed civilian doctors might figure them out first. This was big, capital B. In dentist treatment, we might be able to regrow missing teeth and reverse jaw dedenturation. I followed the studies with great interest. The animal tests were successful, new teeth, better jaws, nice smiles all around. Good. Success. Good. Great. The researchers moved onto human subjects. Failure. Nothing. Still. No reason. No goddamn reason whatsoever. No one could figure out why there was 100% success with animal subjects and 0% with people. The cells wouldn't grow at all. Then a doctor named Franco T something something something, who'd been on the team since the beginning, suggested they try using the Tic Tac cells on people in space. He didn't give a reason, and I don't think he had one. It was probably something that, well, freaking it doesn't work here, so let's try it up there. So we did, and it worked, sort of. The effects were different for everyone. Sometimes cavities were repaired, sometimes jawbones grew again, then again. Sometimes teeth fell out and jaws collapsed. That's what happened to Joe's something. Joe's G. No one wanted to use Venus Tic Tacs ever again. That's why when this astronaut came to me with pain in his gums and jaw and told me he'd been working on the Fang Mi discovery, I was less than thrilled with what I'd find. There had been 6-year moratorium on Venus Tic Tac human experimentation since the Just incident. It had only been lifted a year ago. Apparently, someone on the team wanted to pick up the right where they'd left off. While I talked to the astronaut, he informed me that there had been a new research on the Tic Tacs. I followed. I frowned and I told him I wasn't aware of anything new. He filled me in. Apparently, there had been some civilian advances in stem cell technology that ended up contributing to our knowledge of the science. New experiments were drawn up, plausibility was determined, and one of the team leaders impressed the brass at NASA's ethics division. That, combined with the limited number of Venus Tic Tacs that had been recovered, the surrounding how much longer they'd live, ended up moratorium. Moratorium. That was all well and good. At the point, I hadn't looked inside the astronaut's mouth before we started chatting. I had my assistants do some x-rays of his jaw and they developed while we talked. Then they were ready. I'm going to digress for a second. Have you ever seen a child's skull, what a child's skull looks like before their adult teeth come in? It's unsettling. It's unsettling. That was all of us at one point. I've been a dentist for at least 36 years. I've dealt with a lot of crazy stuff. But just thinking about all those holes makes me uneasy. Some things just stick with you, I guess. Why am I mentioning this? This astronaut, this grown man, had what looked like new teeth forming above his adult ones. They I consulted the x-rays we took before his mission. There was nothing unusual about them, just the filled cavities and the mild bone loss in his jaw that had made him a test candidate for the Tic Tac cells. Now, as I stared at the new x-ray, I saw the cavities were still there, the jaw was still decaying, but those dark smudges on the x-ray indicated new teeth deep in there. I'd never seen anything like it. I remained professional. I asked him to lean back and open his mouth so I could begin the examination. As soon as I took my first look, I knew something was dreadfully wrong. His gums were puffy and bled at the slightest touch. His teeth looked gray as if they'd never been brushed. It didn't make sense. I swung the magnifying lens over and brightened the light. I think he heard me stifle a gasp when I looked through. His teeth were covered in inf- infinitesimal holes. They were much smaller than regular cavities. I looked closer. Each of the holes had tiny pink hair sticking out of its center. I touched the tip of my instrument to one of the hairs. It recoiled back into the tooth. At this point, I was getting uneasy. I asked the astronaut if what I did hurt, and he told me it did, but not badly. I decided to numb the gums around the top of his teeth while I waited for the Novitian to take effect. I studied his molars. Those had bigger holes with thicker growths. When I reached for one of them with my instrument, rather than slip back into the tooth, the hair extended about a quarter of an inch and wrapped around the metal tip. The astronaut didn't seem to feel it. I gave the instrument a gentle tug. Nothing. I pulled harder, but still barely using any force. The molar came out. My patient gasped, and I apologized profusely. I stopped what I was doing, put the instrument and the tooth out of his line of sight. I decided to level them. I told him there was some severe damage to his teeth, and I didn't know what it was. I said I needed to do more exploratory work, and it would most likely be very uncomfortable. The astronaut did his best to take it in stride. He told me he knew something was very, very wrong from the moment he was brushing his teeth on the space station, and the bristles would get caught inside those holes. The thought made me shudder. I numbed his mouth the best I could and got to work. By the end of it, I'd accidentally caused 9 of his teeth to fall out. That remained in their place were those bizarre pink hairs. I sent him back to an appointment for the next day. It was to remove the rest of his teeth. I felt terrible for the guy. I got a call in the middle of the night from the head medicine at the NASA hospital. I had to come there right away. The astronaut's roommate had called emergency services an hour or so ago. He was in excruciating pain and bleeding from the mouth. I arrived at the hospital in 10 minutes. I expected to be able to go right into the room and see the patient, but I was stopped by security and the head of medicine. He instructed me to put on a clean room suit right then. Right then I knew something was deeply wrong. I donned the suit and followed the head into one of the 2 observation areas above the hermetically sealed operating room. So basically, I don't know. Operating room. Okay. I looked at one of the television screens showing the astronaut's mouth. My stomach churned. All the man's teeth had fallen out. In their place, growing out of the gaping were swirling tangles of pink hairs. I watched the surgeons grasp one of the tangles in a pair of forceps and pulled and pulled. One doctor held the astronaut's head while the surgeon put his weight into the effort. With the sound of a heavy piece of brush being torn from the ground, the tangles gave way. They writhed at the end of the forceps, the ones still in his mouth stretched out as if they were trying to take it away and bring it back. The surgeon dropped the veiny clot into the bowl and the camera zoomed in on it. At the top of the tangle was something solid, something that I realized looked very much like one of those new teeth deep inside the astronaut's jawbone I'd seen on the X-ray that afternoon. Now out and exposed in the light, I saw it wasn't a tooth at all. It was a brand new Venus Tic Tac, the first we'd ever discovered outside of the Vincentian meteorite. So the issue was pluripotent stem cells, and whether or not they'd benefit human subjects is still a mystery. And after hours of surgery, the patient is in a coma. As a human being, I write this with a heavy heart. As a scientist, though, I have some hope, maybe even a little excitement. Thanks to that poor astronaut, now we know how to breed new Venus Tic Tacs. Perhaps someday we'll learn how to use them. End of report. Huh, that was interesting. I didn't know that, creepy little alien things growing in your teeth. That doesn't sound good at all. All right, so we're gonna go and find another story because creepypastas are always fun to read. Let me see. Forum. Okay, let's go back to where we were. So, oh yes, it is story time for all you youngins. Let's try to find one that's a little creepier. Some of these are good, I bet, but some of these might not be as good. Cards here. Blood magic. Tales from a gas station. Wilding fever. Okay, we're gonna read Wilding fever, so we can get things interesting in here. Okay. Gorup Longstorm hated the smell, and he thanked the heavenly bodies that he only had to deal with its attack on his olfactory senses once every 10 years. When he was forced to have to live with the odor for a week, it took the unsavory brew to simmer. The response his wife had to the scent never ceased to amaze him. Dry gagging and nausea were Gropup's natural reactions to a large pot of black bubbling goo. Malwanda, however, seemed to feel the complete opposite, of course. Of course, the gruel had different concoctions for her than it did for him. And the mindset she maintained. Okay, I can't even read this. I don't even know. Did you? Okay, so this guy's name is like Wait, let me see. It's like Gorrup. That's not even like a real name. Okay, that's funny. Okay, I thought the NASA one was kind of interesting. Let's see. Let's see. Let's read a classic. Let's see. Because classics are the best. We're gonna wait for that to load. Corrupt. That's what I got from it. Slender Man, Slender Man. So far, no interesting stories, sadly. Because horror stories are hard to find. Guess. We're gonna look here. Okay, so we're gonna read one. Okay, let's read Jeff the Killer. That sounds fun. No. Oh, I know which one we should read. We should read the Russian sleep experiment. Okay, so I've read some of these stories. Okay, so don't get angry at me if I know these stories and you guys don't. That's the whole point. So if you're a big fan of creepypasta, yeah, creepypasta. So far, we haven't found a story that's actually scary, which sucks. Okay, so the Russian sleep experiment. Russian researchers in the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 15 days using an experimental gas-based stimulant. They were kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intakes so the gas didn't kill them, since it was toxic in high concentrations. This was before closed circuit cameras, so they had only microphones and 5-inch thick glass porthole sized windows into the chamber to monitor them. The chamber was stacked with books, cots, but no bedding, running water and toilet, and enough dried food to last all 5 for over a month. The test subjects were political prisoners deemed enemies of the state during the World War III. Everything was fine for the first 5 days. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised falsely that they would be freed if they submitted to the test and did not sleep for 30 days. Their conversations and activities were monitored, and it was noted that they continued to talk about increasingly traumatic incidences in their past, and the general tone of their conversation took on a darker aspect after the 4th-day mark. After 5 days, they started to complain about the circumstances and events that led them to where they were, and started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They stopped talking to each other and began alternately whispering to the microphones, in one way mirrored portholes. Oddly, they all seemed to think they could win the trust of the experimenters by turning over their comrades. The other subjects in captivity with at first the research. Oh yeah. At first, the researchers suspected that this was an effect of the gas itself. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. He ran the length of the chamber repeatedly, yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight. He continued attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords. The most surprising thing about his behavior is how the other captives reacted to it, or rather didn't react to it. They continued whispering to the microphones until the second of the captives started to scream. The second non-screaming captives took the books apart, smeared the smeared page after page with their own feces, and pasted them calmly over the glass portholes. The screaming promptly stopped. So did the whispering to the microphones. After 3 more days passed, researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure they were working. Since they thought it impossible that no sound could be coming with 5 people inside, the oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the same amount of oxygen 5 people could consume at a very heavy level of strenuous exercise. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something that they would not do to get a reaction from the captives. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke any response. The captives, they were afraid any response from the captives they were afraid were either dead or vegetables. And they announced, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor or you will be shot. Compliance will earn you one of your immediate freedom." To their surprise, they heard a single phrase in a calm voice response: "We no longer want to be freed." Debate broke out among the researchers and the military forces funding the research. Unable to provoke any more response using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. The chamber was flushed of the stimulant gas and filled with fresh air, and immediately voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different voices began begging, as if pleading for their life of loved ones, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened and soldiers sent in to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside. 4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, although no one could rightly call the state that they were in life. The food rations past day 5 had not been so much as touched. There were chunks of meat from the dead test subjects' thighs and chest stuffed into the drain in the center of the chamber, blocking the drain and not allowing 4 inches of water to accumulate on the floor. Precisely how much water on the floor was actually blood was never determined. All 4 surviving test subjects also had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from their bodies. The destruction of flesh and exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that the wounds were inflicted by hand, not with teeth, as the researchers initially thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wounds indicated that most, if not all of them, were self-inflicted. The abdominal organs below the rib cage, all 4 test subjects had been removed, while the heart, lungs, diaphragm remained in place. The skin and most of the muscles attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the rib cage. All the blood vessels and organs remained intact. They had been just taken out and laid on the floor, fanning out around the eviscerated but still living bodies of the subjects. The digestive tract of all 4 could be seen to be working, digesting food. It quickly became apparent that what they were digesting was their own flesh that they had ripped off and eaten over the course of days. Most of the soldiers were Russian special operatives at the facility, and still many refused to return to the chamber to remove the test subjects. They continued to scream to be left in the chamber and alternately begged and demanded that the gas be turned back on. At least they fell asleep. To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out. Another was gravely injured by having his testicles ripped off and an artery in his leg severed by one of the subject's teeth. Ew. Another 5 of the soldiers lost their lives if you count ones that committed suicide in the weeks following the incident. In the struggle, one of the 4 living subjects had his spine ruptured and he bled out almost immediately. The medical researchers attempted to sedate him, but this proved impossible. He was injected with more than 10 times the human dose of morphine, derivated and still fought like a cornered animal, breaking the ribs of an arm of a doctor. Sorry, I got mixed up. When Hart was seen to be for a full 2 minutes after he had bled out to the point there was no more air in his vascular system than blood, even after it stopped, he continued to scream and flail for another 3 minutes, struggling to attack anyone in reach, and just repeating the word more over and over, weaker and weaker, until he finally fell silent. The surviving 3 test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility. The 2 with intact vocal cords continuously begging for the gas, demanding to be kept awake. The most injured of the 3 was taken to the only surgical operating room that the facility had. In the process of preparing the subject to have his organs placed back within his body, it was found that he was effectively immune to the sedative they had given him to prepare him for surgery. He fought furiously against his restraints when the anesthetic gas was brought out and put him under. He managed to tear most of the way through the 4-inch wide leather strap on one wrist, even through the weight of a 200-pound soldier holding that wrist as well. It took only a little more anesthesia than normal to put him under. And the instant his eyelids fluttered and closed, his heart stopped. In the autopsy of the test subject that died on the operating table, it was found that his blood had triple the normal level of oxygen. His muscles were still attached to the skeleton his skeleton were badly torn, and he had broken 9 bones in his struggle to not be subdued. Most of them were from the force of his own muscles had exerted on him. Shoot. The second survivor had been the first of the group of the 5 to start screaming. His vocal cords destroyed, he was unable to beg or object to surgery. He only rejected by shaking his head violently in disapproval, and the anesthesia gas was brought near him. He shook his head yes when somebody suggested reluctantly they tried the surgery without anesthesia, and did not react for an entire 6-hour procedure of replacing his abdominal organs and attempting to cover them with what remained of his skin. The surgeon presiding stated repeatedly that it should be medically impossible for the patient to still be alive. One terrified nurse assisting the surgery stated that she had seen the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times whenever his eyes met hers. When the surgery ended, the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to talk while struggling. Assuming this must be something of a importance, the surgeon had a pen and a pad fetched so the patient could write his message. It was simple: keep cutting. The other 2 test subjects were given the same surgery, both without anesthesia as well. Although they had been injected with paralytic for duration of the operation. The surgery found it impossible to perform the operation while the patient laughed continuously. Once paralyzed, the subjects could only follow the attending researchers with their eyes. The paralytic cleared their system in an abnormally short period of time, and they were soon trying to escape their bonds. The moment they could speak, they were again asking for the stimulant gas. The researchers tried asking why they had injured themselves, why they had ripped their own guts out, and why they wanted to be given the gas again. Only one response remained awake. All three substrates were reinforced, and they were placed back into the chamber, awaiting determination as to what should be done with them. The researchers, facing the wrath of their military benefactors for having failed the stated goals of their project, considered euthanizing the surviving subjects. The commanding officer and ex-KGB instead saw potential and wanted to see what would happen if they were put back on the gas. The researchers strongly objected, but were overruled. In preparation for being sealed in the chamber again, the subjects were connected to EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for long-term confinement. To everyone's surprise, all three stopped struggling the moment it was let slip that they were going to be back on the gas. It was obvious that at this point all three were putting on a great struggle to stay awake. One of the subjects that could speak was humming loudly and continuously. The mute subject was straining his legs against the leather bounds with all his might. First left, then right, then left again, for something to focus on. The remaining subject was holding his head off his pillow and blinking rapidly. Having been the first to be wired for EEG, most of the researchers were monitoring his brainwaves in surprise. They were normal most of the time, but sometimes flatlined inexplicably. It looked as if he were repeatedly suffering brain death before returning to normal. As they focused on paper scrolling out of the brainwave monitor, only one nurse saw his eyes slip shut at the same moment his head hit the pillow. His brainwaves immediately changed to that of deep sleep, then flatlined for the last time as his heart simultaneously stopped. The only remaining subject that could speak started screaming to be sealed in now. His brain waves showed the same flat lines as one who had just died from falling asleep. The commander gave the order to seal the chamber with subjects inside, as well as three researchers. One of the named three immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank between the eyes, then turned the gun on the mute subject and blew his brains out as well. He pointed his gun at the remaining subjects, still restrained in the bed, as the remaining members of the medical and research team fled the room. "I will be locked in here with these things, not with you," he screamed at the man strapped to the table. "What are you?" he demanded. "I must know." The subject smiled. "Have you forgotten so easily?" the subject asked. "We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate to silence the paralysis when you go to the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread." The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject's head and fired. The EEG flatlined as the subject weakly croaked out, "So nearly free." Well, that was interesting. That was interesting. That'd be creepy if. Well, I mean, considering the average human, I wouldn't be surprised if this was an actual real thing. But just so nobody gets freaked out, we can't say it's real. Hmm. See. Okay, so they all died, but the one who tore his vocal cord started speaking. That's creepy. Hmm. Let's find one that's like. Is there one that's rated 10 stars or no? No. All right. Click on one of these. Okay. We're gonna read this one now, and it's called "From Me to You." It's a scary thing, okay? It happens. Okay, let's begin. So it's called, what is it called again? From Me to You. Okay. I sat on a bench under an autumn dried tree where I usually spent my time after school. The cemetery was empty, no surprise. An occasional mourner dropped flowers, always some old person coming in to see a lost loved one, or a jogger taking a new route for change. Nobody goes to the cemetery because they want to, at least nobody but me. It's not like a daughter or son would stop to see a parent who's passed away. It's those little things you notice after a while. Who cares and how they show it? I was reading a book to set the mood, Poe's ever atmospheric. The Pit and the Pendulum, to be specific. It always made the sunny days turn to cold nights. With the aid of my parasol to cast a much-needed shadow over me, the last thing I needed was a tan. The gray clouds too few in numbers to fend off the sun above. At least it was quiet. No noise from any cars, since the only thing nearby was a small neighborhood straight out of Leave It to Beaver, even though the cemetery was out of the way from my house. I'd rather be around a bunch of dead dudes than be bored to death in my room. There's nobody to relate to in this backwater town, especially for a girl that wears all black and would prefer a flannel skirt with chains over tight jeggings. I always look at the other girls at school and knew for a fact that I didn't want to be like them, loud, flirty, giggly at every little thing, trying to get a guy's attention. It's just not for me. But what are friends for anyway? All they do is tell you what to do, what to wear, how to do your hair, talk behind your back, take up your time, and make you miserable. Who needs them? I started to sink into the story when somebody walked by, the scuffling of their shoes on the cement path making me look up. It was a boy, cute as can be. I remember seeing him at school before, maybe an 11th grader at the most, probably a track guy with the strong legs and slim size he had. He was looking at me right in the eyes. right Looking at me right when my eyes got up to his, and I tensed, unwantedly pretending like I was still reading. When the feeling of someone coming too close popped my bubble, I looked up again, as if I didn't know who was there. Haven't I seen you somewhere before? He asked. I tried to find my place while talking. I don't know. I haven't seen you here before. He pointed at the nearby gates at the end of the path where the timeless suburb was. I live right there, super close by. I never really got through here since cemeteries give me the creeps. There was a short pause, but he didn't leave. What are you doing here just reading? I'm trying to. For what? School? Nope. For fun? Cross-legged, I wiggled my foot, like when a cat wags their tail angrily. Do you mind? I kind of go to a place with no people for a reason. He held up his hands defensively, a thumb hanging onto a strap of his backpack. Sorry, just being friendly. You like stories? I got a story for you. It's about this cemetery. You'll love it. I gave in, flooded by his pestering. He was lucky he was cute, or else I would have ignored him in the first place. I didn't realize that was why I let him talk, not until later. I felt shallow, but it's not really anything new. I wasn't alone in that way of thinking. I'm sure any human being would rather sit down with somebody they wanted to kiss than sit down with somebody they wanted to kill. He seemed pretty human to me. I slammed my book shut, frowning at him, hoping it would intimidate him. Go ahead, impress me. He sat next to me without an invitation, chuckling as if he was impressed by his own story before he even told it. It's an old legend that my dad told me after we moved here a few years back. He told me to be careful when you put your hand on a grave, because if you do, it will stir up the soul of the person buried there. I yawned, lip, patting my black lips with a gloved hand. That's baby stuff, let me guess. Then the soul haunts you forever. He seemed to enjoy it when I overly dramatically snarled, gargled, I don't know how to say that word, my hands at him, and my crappy attempt at a Romanian accent put a smile on his face. Close, but let me finish, he insisted. I'm not done yet, you little know-it-all. I squished my face at him, perhaps a bit too flirty now that I look back. It was one of those habits I didn't even know I had. You see, the legend has it where you put your hand on a gravestone, then you say the words, from me to you. If you do that, the soul enters your body and the spirit will come to you to ask for something. If you do what it asks you to, you get a reward, like something you really want. But if you don't, the spirit takes over your body and your soul is lost forever. I snorted, laughing under my hand. There was no way to look cute. There was no way to look cute doing that. But that didn't stop me from trying to be dainty about it. So how long does it take for the ooky spooky spirit to steal your soul? Let me guess. 13 days? 666 hours? Something cheesy like that? Not even. It's different from person to person. Like an addiction. Some can fight it, others can't. It's all a matter of will. I mean, I've never done it before. In fact, I don't believe in it really. It's was just some stupid story my dad would always say to scare me. I guess he just didn't want me to get lost here by accident or something. Sounds like he cares a lot. I'd never be able to know the feeling. He didn't catch it. Either that or he didn't have time to bother with my daddy issues. Instead, all he did was awkwardly give me a wave and slap the side of his jeans. Well, I'm Jared. It's been nice talking to you, but I gotta run. Right. When he turned his back to me, I replied, I'm Helena. He turned around surprised that I even bothered to tell him my name. Maybe the eyeliner made him think my stare was cold when it was really warmer than wanted. But that was me trying to get in his head. What he did do was give a grin like someone handed him a gift. Helena, cool, it fits, a unique name for a unique girl. I actually smiled at that remark. It wasn't every day someone called me unique in a nice way. It was not like anything was needed to be said. He waved goodbye and left the gates. I watched him walk all the way across the cemetery before I even remembered I had a book on my lap. I tried getting back in the story, but the stupid story he told me took up my brain like a damn study session. I couldn't focus on written words in the page. Once the book spell was broken, it was like fixing a broken mirror, more trouble than it's worth. I decided to head on home, taking the opposite gate that Gerard took. Picking up my parasol, I nearly skipped my way out of there. There was joy in my step I wasn't used to, a joy I never really felt before. Passing a line of graves, my eyes caught the name that got my attention. The gravestone of Lenore Wu, 1987, died 2012. Died at the age of 25, barely 10 years older than me. If only it said that she died of what she died of, but that would be asking too much to put on someone's gravestone for all to see. I quickly assumed in my head that it was the unusual drunk driver victim they have every month, even in such a small town like mine. But that name, Lenore, I couldn't pass it up. What would taking a second to prove the story wrong too. I mean, a small part of me thought the story could be possible. The part of the body that says ghosts are real and aliens exist, while the other 99% of me told my feet to keep walking. Almost throwing myself against the porous slab of granite, I put my hand to the stone, right over her name. It was a lot colder than expected, especially for something that had been out in the sun all day. Despite going to the cemetery for so long and so many times, it was the first time I've ever laid hands on one. Closing my eyes, I whispered under my breath, "From me to you." For a second, I waited, expecting hands to come out of the ground and drag me under, or for some kind of ghostly cloud to seep into my mouth. But no, nothing happened. The wind kicked up a bit, blowing some dead leaves over my fishnet stockings. That was it. Slipping my hand down into the grass, I pouted mentally. I knew it. It's just a stupid bedtime story. Getting up, I loudly, brushing the bits of crumpled leaves off my knees. Oh well, now I know. I walked home right after that, disappointed the whole way and thinking about Gerard. I don't know why. It's not like he's Tom Hardy with a sawed-off shotgun and chain and a chained-on mask. He seemed so real. Nothing fake. Not trying to impress people around him. Not trying to get me to go out with him and not trying to get me to like him. It was a natural friendliness I wasn't used to, abrupt as it was. He could probably smell the loneliness radiating off of me from a mile away, like a bloodhound searching for an escaped convict in the woods. Usually, I try to send people off as fast as they start talking, but with him, I didn't mind. I kind of liked his voice and the lips he used to talk with. The conflicting feelings circled around in my head the entire way home. I started talking about keeping an eye out for him at school tomorrow. Thinking, not talking. The house was empty, my mom at work, so nobody to bother saying hello to. The time I got out of school was the time she only actually getting to see her once or twice before I started spending time at the cemetery. It seemed like the pictures of us scattered around the walls was the only reason I remembered how she looked. I've always hated the pictures she had of me when I was younger, all smiling and stuff. It looked disgusting. But they made mom happy, so it was bearable. That didn't mean I never tried to throw them away before, and boy, did I learn the punch my mom was packing on that day. There was no reason for me to go into the kitchen. The leftovers in the fridge were going to be untouched once again, even though I looked like Jack Skellington with spiky black hair and snake bites. I didn't have much of an appetite. I think I was too skinny, but I always got compliments about it, not even a million "you look goods" would make me feel better about the way I looked. I tried to avoid the mirror built into the closet of my room at all cost. The more I looked, the more I felt that I shouldn't be who I was. Night arrived faster than I could even realize. The dark curtains I covered my window with concealing the outside world. One by one, I blew out the black candles that lighting the room and keeping it warm. With only one left burning on my nightstand, I lay in bed and stared at the heavily shadowed ends this moment. The Nightwish posters I had scattered on my walls. I felt tired, and I had nearly passed out during class earlier, but I couldn't get relaxed. No matter how much I tossed and turned, I couldn't get any sleep. The candle's flame wisped and coiled like a snake ready to strike. A distortion in the air. I noticed a slow increase of pressure in the air, half hidden by the stuffiness and scent of the dead candles. I buried my head into the pillow, hoping that putting my hands into the cool underside would get me relaxed enough to doze off. It didn't work. My eyes were wide open as ever. With my nose pressed deeply into the pillowcase, my heart started pounding when the slightest amount of weight fell by my feet. I froze, pretending that I was asleep, that I was part of the bed itself. My body was a folding in the thick sheets. Someone was on the bed with me, and there was nobody else that was supposed to be home. I hadn't had a cat since I was 10, and whoever was here with me had the chilling presence of a winter's draft. The bed creaked softly, my visitor leaning forward. The sound of a girl crying softly was amplified in the quiet of the enclosed room, the sound coming from the end of the bed. I couldn't do it. She sounded distant for being so close, like she was speaking from behind walls. I couldn't go on. I didn't know why my brain presumed the most likely solution to what was happening, but then again, maybe having someone suddenly appear out of thin air fueled the idea that what I did in the cemetery actually had worked. Lenore Wu, is that you? She didn't answer, too occupied with crying her eyes out. Sitting up, I could see the back of her head, long black hair draped over her shoulders, white nightgown. She wore What she wore glowed in the daylight, her skin hinted with a lifeless blue. Empathy tugged at my heart. I've been at that point where crying was the last resort, the last thing your body would allow. No matter how much I tried to stay calm, I was shaking like crazy, frightened of what was on the other side of that flowing curtain of hair. I cleared my throat, talking to her like she was Elba's child. What is it? Why are you crying? What could I do to help? Bring her back to life, like in some of those crappy teen movies about geek demigods. She came back, and she came back through me. So something could be done. A wrong done right. I had no idea what she had in store for me, but even before she opened her mouth, I was willing to do anything, mostly to get her the hell away from me, and also kind of because I wanted to prove myself that I could do something good for once. But still, I wasn't willing to run away from such a thing. I couldn't do it, she said in the tiniest voice, as if she was on the other side of the wall instead of a few inches away. I couldn't go on with it. I thought about putting my hand on her shoulder, but I didn't dare touch her. I had no idea what she was planning. If she was going to attack me or turn around and show me some kind of gaping hole for her face, my my mind was almost more focused on the things she could do to me, what she was actually doing. Sitting there like a girl who was dumped on prom night, I held my knees in, hugging myself to get a grip on the current matter. If I wasn't so tired and used to the idea of talking to people who weren't there, I probably would have waited until morning to go to the nearest nut house. Go with what? I asked, resting my cheek on my knee. My body was to the point of being unresponsive, but I myself was wide awake and at full attention. Nobody wants to listen to me, she said pitifully. Nobody cared. I care. No, you don't. Try me. She started to turn around, making me flinch back from the thoughts in my head running wild when I saw her face. I was relieved to see the face of a pretty Asian girl, her hair covering her eyes, her lips were dark blue, and her eye was pure red. But strangely, I wasn't afraid anymore. Crawling over to sit beside her at the foot of the bed, I slowly tried to touch her bare shoulder. It was a block of ice, but I kept a hand on her skin, having it warm up with my body heat. She seemed to steady her breathing when I got closer, finally able to talk normally. You really want to listen to me? Of course. I'm sure there's a lot to say about how you know. Lenore looked down at her hands and guided them up to her eyes, holding them shut. My parents wanted me to be something, to be someone. They came from China, thinking it would be better here. Right after high school, they wanted me to go to college. I need money to go to college, so I had to get a job. I was in college, I had a job, everything seemed so good. Sounds good. So what happened then? I couldn't sleep. I had to pay for my tuition. Even after the financial aid, working and studying in classes, I barely had any time to sleep. Sometimes I would lie in bed and keep myself awake because I was afraid that I was going to miss class. Halfway through I lost my job, I started failing classes. All I had in my mind was the debt I had. The credit cards I had to use and couldn't pay. I had to leave college with less than what I started with. That sounds awful, I said after a few seconds of staring at my dress. Sir, it was all I could think of saying. For as little as it mattered, I knew exactly where the story was going from here, but I allowed her to continue. She raised her head up, shaking again. Her hair slowly started getting wet, and her skin started to dampen, nearly having my hand slip right off. I held her closer, not caring about my getting my clothes wet from the water gradually pouring out of her like she was melting. I knew the setup. Let's see where I'm at again. I knew the setup, and I knew the state of mind it puts a girl in. And I knew all she wanted was a hug, at least. With a quivering hand, she grabbed my arm, trying her best to hug back. I borrowed money from a friend, she continued hesitantly. I told her I would pay her back when I could. I bought a bottle of sleeping pills and walked all the way to the beach outside of town. One by one, I sat there at the pier, swallowing one pill after another, thinking of all the things I wasn't going to be able to do. The last thing I remember was falling headfirst into the water, falling asleep at the same time, and I never woke up after. I held her by the shoulders, looking into her eyes. Lenore, you didn't have to do that. You didn't have to go all the way like that. Why didn't you just tell that friend you borrowed money from? She was a friend of yours. She would have listened to you. She would have gotten help. How could she? I had nothing. I had less than nothing. I wasted entire years for nothing. I had more debt than I could ever pay back. I don't know if I could have called anyone a friend. I barely talked to anybody. I never sat down and talked to anyone about anything. I just study, work. I just wanted someone to say I wasn't a total failure. I just want someone to say it wasn't all for nothing. Lenore, you're not a failure. I may be, but you're not. You got to go to a good college. You got to go to a good college. You got to. Half of the world couldn't say the same. The only thing you did wrong was give up. But nobody could ever say you didn't succeed. You almost had what you wanted. You almost made your parents proud, but you blew it. Not by failing the classes, but by ending your life the way you did. If you had a second chance, I'm pretty sure you would have just gone back home to give it another go. The face she made was like she hadn't inherited a fortune, a face so grateful it nearly glowed in the heavenly light. In a heavenly light. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. Now I can go on, knowing that there was a chance that I didn't take. This time, this whole time, I thought there was no other way. Now I can rest in peace, thanks to you. No problem. I said a bit too casual, thinking back to it. Anytime, I mean, I'm pretty sure this is the last time I'll see you. I kind of wish we were friends in real life. I'm pretty sure we could have gotten along. She smiled, looking more like an adorable child than a 20-year-old specter. Me too, although you kind of seem like a weird. I hacked out a laugh. Don't push it. I shall reward you for your sympathy and kindness. A gift from me to you. I was shocked. Everything exactly how Gerard said it would be. My body flashed with an electric jolt of joy. I would have jumped and squealed if my legs weren't like two wet noodles. Thank you. I don't really know what I want though. Nothing I would want to waste a gift like this on, at least. She pulled me down and tucked me under the covers, keeping her contagious smile. You know what you want, and you'll get it. Goodbye, Helena. See you on the other side. Lenore walked out of the room and closed the door behind me. Instantly, I woke up, not remembering when I had fallen asleep. My room was covered in a gentle glow of the morning sun. It was earlier when I usually woke up. Most of the time, I would look at my alarm clock and jump out of bed before being late. This time, I saw that I still had plenty of time to get ready, and actually, there was a chance to eat breakfast, something I usually had to skip. There was an unusual peacefulness in the air, like every worry in the world was erased from existence. But school would fix that. High school had the supernatural ability to ruin everything for good. Amen. I couldn't understand what happened, and all my classes All my class time was used up by endless wonder about the previous night. Did that actually happen? Did I really talk to a dead girl? Even laugh with her? Why the hell did she tuck me into bed? That was so freaking weird. Lunchtime came in and I still hadn't done anything in class that would have alarmed me if I actually did classwork before. What had me worrying was there were two things that could have happened. Gerard urban legend was true and I talked to a girl who had committed suicide, or one of the strange streams and needed to cut down on the spicy food. Either way, no matter what I determined, the scene kept playing back in my head over and over through the hallway. I wasn't paying attention to anything in front of me, just walking mindlessly like a zombie. Gerard passed right by me and didn't notice until he called out my name. Hey, Helena, you in a hurry somewhere? His voice snapped me awake and from whatever trance I was in. The last thing I had in my head was Lenore saying, "You'll get it." I shook my head, seeing him walking up to me. Tried to act natural but failed. My voice cracked right away. Oh no, no. I'm not going anywhere in particular. Just heading nowhere fast. I pointed at the guitar in his hand, trying to hide the smile coming from the thought he played and played well. I didn't know you played guitar. Are you any good? He looked away, a little embarrassed. I try. I mean, I'm still learning, but I put a song together. Just nothing that I want to. All the music I listen to is has some of the craziest instruments going on, especially prog metal. Dude, that stuff is intense. I turned to face at him. Did you just call me dude? His eyes bugged out. No, I didn't mean that. I laughed at his reaction. I'm just messing with you. But that look on your face sure was priceless. He looked at his watch, seeing that it was still early lunch. I'm not holding you up, am I? You don't have anybody waiting for you, do you? Is that why you were in a hurry? Oh no, nobody's waiting for me. I mean, I didn't plan to eat lunch with anybody today in particular. I coughed, uncomfortably. Well, you can say to me if you want. All of my friends decided to play hooky today. I guess just nowhere too far. I don't want to run up the stairs on my way to fifth period. So, walking beside him, we went to the place to sit down. So, what they didn't tell you they were going to ditch? Or are you too much of a goody two shoes to skip school? Well, if you ask me, it didn't matter much. I didn't know what he meant by that. On that day, he saw I wasn't eating and tried to share his lunch with me. No matter how many times I said I wasn't hungry, after that, I started bringing my own lunch, waking up early enough to make one of my own. My mom's throwing away in the room in the morning. It wouldn't be so bad if my black lipstick didn't smear onto my sandwich bread, but when I applied more lipstick after eating, I would catch boy staring at me, and I liked it. It was good to have someone look at me in a good light for once, not because they thought I was a freak. He told me he liked piercings and he liked the way I dressed. I bet he'd said it more if he wasn't so shy about things, but I like about him. He didn't try to butter me up, raise my self-esteem because he thought it was low, like how most of the girls were here. He treated me nice because he wanted to. I know I sound like a know-it-all all the time, a lot of the time, how saying how I knew what he was thinking, but that's how it goes. You can observe. I spent a lot of time watching other people live and talk, having nothing to act upon until I met Gerard. That's when things changed. He hung out with me every time for a week. That's when I easily assumed his friends didn't really play hooky. He asked me out Friday. It was cute. He was all nervous and trying to make it sound like, oh my gosh, it's like reading one of those freaking really girly freaking freaking girl fan fictions, freaking writing about this. Okay, I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna say when he was leaning towards me, I had to hold my breath to stop myself from freaking out. Time froze. It was just me and him in the world in the cemetery under a dead tree. Okay, he held me close and I held back. I think it could get any better. I wanted to stay there until the sun came up. When he said goodbye, heading off on to his 1950 suburb, I fought the urge to call out to him and chase him home. I didn't want him to leave me. I knew he wasn't that kind of person. I knew he liked me a lot, but I didn't want the chance of him leaving me. I'm pretty sure this was Lenore's gift. I mean, what could else could she have mean? Could have caused a guy like me to fall for a girl like me. So if they had the power to make him like me, I was sure the spirits right under my feet had the power to make him stay, to eliminate any doubt in my mind. On my way to the other side of the place, I strolled by the line of graves, opposite to the side I went by last. In the moonlight, a gravestone caught my eye. Again, the name underlined one of the bare branches of the tree. Roderick Usher, 1784, 1833. Ooh, this is gonna get good. I didn't even know the town was old enough to have someone from the 1800s in it. But I guess even the smallest towns had to start sometime. Like clockwork, I got down to the grave, put a hand on it, and I said, "From me to you." I didn't know what I did differently, or if I just did my imagination anticipating what was bound to happen. But a cold pulse of something went through my arm. Right away, I felt like sweating, like a fever was swelling up. I figured I had dropped to my knees too fast, or I was unconsciously excited about the next ghost I was going to talk to. Maybe the older the soul, the harder they hit, or something like that. After getting up and having the soothing wind relax me a bit, I headed on home. Right on arrival to my ever empty house, I nearly flopped over the welcome mat in exhaustion. The movie drained me. The kiss made my brain kick over into overdrive, and the gravestone made me ready to call it a night. Getting out of my corset and into my typical skull-covered pajamas, I slipped right into bed, not even bothering to turn on any lights while getting undressed. Of course, having my head on the pillow made me wide awake. Drowsiness was avoiding me like the plague, but thankfully I had a full moon to look at, lighting up my room through the slits of the blind. It got me thinking. I started to worry if Gerard was going to stay. I knew he liked me, to know to know me, to know how I was, that was what worried me. The thin, self-inflicted split on my exposed arms were shadows in the moonlight, almost amplified. I took my hand under my head and avoided those recent memories. I needed him to stay. I needed another from me to you to make sure he was not going to dump me like some trash in the gutter. I've never been dumped before, but it must be awful if the sheer thought of it has the power to make you want to fall to the ground and never get back up. It was the thought of, if not him, then who? And knowing there was nobody else, the pain and from pondering stabbed at my insides, making me feel tired again. I would have probably passed out right then and there, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that someone was watching me. Rolling over, I gasped at the sight of a man sitting at my desk, facing away from me. His entire body was covered in a old hooded cloak, burns and holes covering the back of it. Nothing visible under the openings. It was common coach to wear that kind of thing. I figured he was riding a stagecoach for someone when a bandit came and slit his throat, something of that nature. That was my first impression, and it was far from the truth. He didn't turn around or move in the slightest. In a gentle, almost comforting voice, he said two words: "Kill yourself." I froze, holding my breath like I was trying to hide from him. He already knew where I was, even with him facing the other way. There was no way I could escape his sight. Sitting up and leaning forward, I carefully moved as if I were nose to nose with a cobra, not daring to blink. I kept my eyes on the faint shadow in the corner of the room as best as I could, ready for it to fly at me. I'm sure a ghost could do whatever they wanted, not chained down by physical mass anymore. I had no idea what I was dealing with, and great regret was already coursing with my blood. "Excuse me, what did you say?" Turning his head to the side, he spoke more firmly, yet still calm enough to make it sound like if he was asking if I wanted more tea. "You heard me. Kill yourself." Breathing harder than ever, I could see my breath clouding in front of my mouth and the air growing colder. I tried to keep myself under control, but the best I could do was prevent tears of fear from coming out and my shivering from being too noticeable. Is I'm assuming that is your request. Yes, it is, and I believe it is the only one worth requesting. Don't you agree? I shook my head, resisting the urge to open my big mouth and possibly anger him. I knew for a fact that the last thing I needed was for him to be angry. No, not really. I don't like that request one bit. Is there anything else I can do for you, perhaps? I only have one request in mind, and that is for you to kill yourself. You may choose the way you die, but it must be by your own hand. But why do you want me to want me to do something like that? He stood up. I flinched, almost falling out of the bed. You have my request, he said with absent emotion. I suggest you fulfill it or suffer the consequences. He suddenly blended with the darkness around him, disappearing before my eyes. The air grew warmer, returning to the sense of life inside the room. As for the feeling of being watched that lingered as I lay awake for the rest of the night, it was one of the longest nights of my life. Looking at the ceiling and hoping it wasn't going to be my last sight of Earth, thinking back to what happened with Lenore and how she willingly did what I was now being requested to do. Right after Gerard came to my mind, that was I knew I couldn't do it. No matter what, I had someone to look forward to, had something to cherish and fulfill. It wasn't much, but it was all I wanted and all I needed. I've already gone through the low point, puberty, and I already saw the scars reminding me of how foolish I was. Never again. I would never give in to temptation of an easy ending. The quote, to quote the Raven, nevermore. Never more shall I succumb to the false joy I had presumed to await me on the other side. Seeing the spirits showed me that there is not much to do after death, despite the two life-changing visits. I still wasn't sure if the spirits were even real. Could it have simply been me going crazy? I will admit I was not a very stable person when I was younger. I used to have imaginary friends, not many, but I still had them. But everyone had imagined friends. I'm sure I wasn't the only one. Could it be loneliness getting to me, making me crack? Anyone could would have had the same effect after being absent of human interaction for so long, no matter how much they preferred to be by themselves. I had no clue. All I knew is for sure I did not want to see that thing again. The coachman and his revolting request, just thinking about it made it froze my skin. It made my stomach feel like I was trying to digest a ball of heroin needles. I tried my best to focus on something better as I lay there, stiff and deprived of drowsiness. Last time I felt like hopping out of bed and saying hello to the world. This time I wanted to tell the world to shove it and to shove it deep. I could have skipped school and just stayed in bed all day. I've done that a few times before, but I knew seeing Gerard would rid me of the stupid worries. 4 hours of pointless class time was well worth the hello kiss and a half-hour lunch we had together. It was a lot better than being in the room and waiting for the coachman to reappear. That's for sure. He could tell me I was mentally preoccupied. I wasn't very good at hiding it. I suddenly sat there against the wall beside him, staring at my knee-high boots and fiddling with my iron cross necklace. He acted like nothing was wrong, but he most likely lost his own appetite from my draining appearance. I didn't hear him touch his food in the slightest. Putting a hand over my shoulder, his warmth seemed to snap me out of my trance. I was in. I tried to give him a assuring smile, mustering my weakest one in existence. "Everything okay?" he asked, trying not to sound too serious. "You've been awful quiet, and that means something with you being you." I nodded, patting his arm pleasantly. "I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Just haven't been sleeping well all night doing homework." I widened my eyes. "Oh yeah, a lot of homework. Gallons and gallons of homework." "I get ya. I don't like doing homework either, but my dad monitors me like a watchdog. If he doesn't see me doing it, he takes away my friend privileges. That means no mall with bros, no movies with and have that happen, can we?" "No way. Movies with you is what makes the week worth it." I could swear I was blushing since I felt the warmth of my face for the first time. till all day. Pressing my lips together, trying not to say something stupid, sadly. I really don't want to sound nosy, but I just couldn't notice you never mentioned your mother. You never mentioned your father, he replied, more timid than aggressive. Looking to my boots, I assume we don't mention them for a reason. Yeah, well, not the same reason, but same result. Gone. He looked down at the floor between his legs too. It's not easy. I'm still trying to get used to my dad's lineup of girlfriends. He scratches his cheek, changing the focus over to me. So it's just you and your mom? Yep, no brothers, no sisters, no mom either, really. She is always working, and I only get to see her on weekends. And when I see her, I only get to see her ready to go off to the clubs or bar or whatever. We don't really bond much, not like her and the girls. She's 35 and still acts like a teenager on her first chance to go drinking. It's like she's trying to ignore the mistakes she's made. She's had Must get lonely in the house. You have no idea. If you want, I can come over sometime. I mean, you got someone to make some noise and keep you company. I chuckled excitedly at what he said, like a kid buying candy. Yeah, actually, I'd like that. It'd be a good way for us to be alone. Whoa, really? I mean, good, good, good. That's really good. I lightly patted his knee with the back of my hand. Good boy, I'm inviting you to my house. Not a trip to Paris. The bell rang, making me okay. We're gonna skip a bit now because it's just stupid. I wanna, if she's gonna die, I wanna read that part because I mean, like she's just, oh yeah, oh my gosh, Gerard. No, we want to see the scary stuff. Gerard waited for me by the school gates, like always, seeing his face glow as I approached. Okay, blah blah blah, fluff, 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 crap, crap, crap. Okay, we're gonna. What the fudge? This is like fan fiction. Listen, look at okay. Listen to Helen. He whispered, "I want to make this night special." What the fudge? Okay, no, we're gonna skip down to the good stuff. No. Um, okay, okay. Um, his face passed by the shadow of the curtains as he leaned back forward. That was when my heart nearly jumped out of my throat. The coachman was on top of me, taking Gerard's place, his pure white mouth sticking out of the shadow of his coat's high collar. I tried to push him away, but he pinned my arms down to the mattress. All I could do was struggle to the point where my arms felt like they were going to snap out of place. You're mine now. I saw his mouth stretch open past his neck, and I screamed as if my end was near. Regurgitating loudly, the coachman's mouth poured a shower of maggots into mine. I could feel the little things wiggling and being squished by my lips as I tried to spit them out, feeling like I was going to choke to death on them, as well as my own vomit from the taste. I coughed and sputtered frantically. Flying off the bed, I held onto the windowsill, gasping for whatever air I could. Gerard patted my back. Whoa, whoa, what happened? Did some saliva go down the wrong pipe? Ew. Finally able to breathe normally, I checked my mouth with my fingers, and maggots were gone. Nothing but loose strands of hair clinging to the side of my lips. With a quick sigh, I instantly felt my face get red with embarrassment. Right away, I covered my eyes and tried to hide my tears. My sniffling let Gerard knew anyway, and it made me cry even more. Helena, what's the matter? I tried to stop the tears, but it's already too late. I don't know. Are you having, girl stuff? Because it's cool if you are. What the freak? I got the waterworks to stand by so he wasn't mad at me like I feared. He even made a better excuse than what I could have at the moment. I took it as a lucky break and rolled with it. Yeah, it is just that time of the month that completely slipped my mind. Say no more. He grabbed his shirt and put it back on. Yep, I knew it. Mentally frowned for what happening. Jeez, what is this? Oh my gosh, this keeps going. What the fudge? I want to see this girl die. Okay, you know what? We're just gonna make up our own ending for that because dang it, freaking Gerard. Hormonal teenagers. Put. Now that's scary. Hormonal teenagers. That wasn't good. But you know what? That's okay. We'll just say the coachman possessed her and she jumped out of her window. That's the end of Helena. And then Gerard standing at the front of her, I don't know, front of her gravestone is like, oh, she's dead, man, I miss her, whatever. And then he leaves and then he goes and dates some other girl. And then, Helena got what she deserved in the end anyways, so it all works out. All works out. But yeah, that was probably that was a pretty bad story, okay? No offense to the writer if they ever get to watching this, but man, that was horrible. Like, I would have liked to see more of the coachman instead of like, oh, Gerard and Helena, woo! Yeah, I get it. She's goth. She's got problems. I don't care. The whole point is supposed to be scary, right? Scary. Gotta have some like throat being ripped out. Gotta have like some of that stuff that happened in the other freaking story. We gotta have some people, getting their testicles ripped off and whatnot. I think that's a little cringy for guys, but that's it. That's how it goes, I guess. Scary stories are like Slender Man when the people go like, oh, I got a car accident. I don't remember what happened, but I know that there's something following me and I gotta get away. So, they're running through the woods, Slender Man's coming up, and then they're like screaming, and then they end up dying by Slender Man because they lose their mind because they can't comprehend that he doesn't have a face. I don't get it. Slender Man's a great guy, it's just that's just top, I think. I think well, he's not a great guy per se. Well, he's not a great guy per se. Slender Man is just like I think he's like the best creature created because he dresses nice, he's creepy, he lives in the forest, and maybe that's why girls are like, oh my god, Slender Man is because he dresses nice. No man dresses nice anymore and enjoy it. No man just casually dresses nice. They always dress weird. Eh. Dating's too good. No one dresses nice anymore. Not even me. I dress I dress casual. Anyways, man, I've been reading for like an hour and a few minutes. Okay, so what we did is we're just gonna say that Helena jumped out of the window by the dead coachman guy. I thought the creepy ghost girl was gonna kill her. Honestly, when I was reading it, I felt like the creepy ghost girl should have killed her. Like got her close and making her think she's safe, and then be like, oh yeah, oh my gosh, I died this way, and you're gonna die this way. And she like chokes Helen out or something. But no, they skipped on that opportunity. They're like, you know what? We need more Gerard and Helena. Hmm. I think now that I'm thinking about it, maybe Helena gets thrown into a crazy person's house. Because think about it, she has all the. She said she used to have imaginary friends and stuff, and then she's seeing things now. And then in the end, Gerard's like, I don't like you, and that's how she commits suicide. She loses her mind first, and then she commits the suicide, and then the story ends like that. Actually, seeing Gerard, man, my nose is itchy on the sides. Seeing Gerard kill, well, not seeing, reading Gerard kill Helena would have made an interesting ending. The Russian sleep experiment had the best story that was kind of creepy. Though I do recommend watching Mr. Creepypasta on YouTube. He actually reads creepypasta stories that are good, and he does really good at them because he has the voice for them. I do not have the voice for them. Currently, I am going through, I think, a sore throat because my throat keeps cracking and being weird recently. I don't know. Needs to be in higher vocals. Maybe that's why my vocals are a bit low, so it's changing. Maybe I don't know. But yeah, Russian Sleep Experiment. I thought I like that one. That's my personal favorite. I wanted to read Jeff the Killer, but I didn't know where to find a specific story since there's so many. I wanted to find a good one, but I want to read more stories, but I need to find some good ones. So But I wanted to do this because, Halloween's close by and I like Halloween and the creepy stories and the stories where people are like saying, "Oh, I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw writing all over my walls." And the thing is, when I blinked my eyes again, the writing started to slowly dissipate away and like there was nothing there except my original walls. That kind of thing. Well, I hope you like this live stream. I'm going to take a break because my voice is really sore. I'm going to go drink some tea and relax, because none of this actually scared me. These stories, people need to up their writing game. But the only book story that I actually got scared of because the details actually wasn't actually a book. It was like a poem by Edgar Allan Poe, and he actually's got some good scary ones, and that was the only story I think I've read that was actually scary. So, you know, please like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and I will catch you guys later.